Free Speech Zone. Here's your host, Eric Barnard.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Free Speech Zone. I am your host, Eric Barnard. We're coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia, and I want to give a special shout-out to the Constitute Voice for sponsoring this episode today. You can find them at www.constitutevoice.com. The Constitute Voice promotes free thought, radical honesty, and common sense. We have a very special guest with us in the studio today. He is a candidate seeking the Republican nomination for the Georgia 7th Congressional District, Mark Gonsalves.
Nice to meet you, Eric.
Yeah, Mark, pleasure for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time out of this.
We appreciate the opportunity to spread our message.
That's our thrill. So, Mark, tell me exactly why you decided to make the jump in and actually run for Congress.
Well, it's an outsider's perspective. I have a degree in accounting and have been in the business world for quite some time, had some successes, big successes there, and then also 2008, 2009 was a bit challenging for a lot of Americans, myself included. Here's the thing. I have an only child. She's a sophomore in college now, and I just really feel strongly that what we've done is we've burdened the next generation with an unusually high threshold of pain, right? You've got $22 trillion in debt that they didn't create.
Right.
You've got student debt that's closing in on $2 trillion now. You got a healthcare system that's broken. You got a border that's wide open and an opioid epidemic that just seems to get worse. So whatever happened to the notion that we would leave to the next generation of Americans a country in better shape than the one bestowed to us?
Right.
I feel like my generation is the one that is failing the future generations, and that's what caused me to take action. Plus, obviously, watching our 116th Congress take their oaths of office, right, in January, and realizing very quickly that the power had changed in the House.
Yes.
And the Democrats, in my opinion, they campaigned under a false premise. So we didn't know in November of 2018 about the Green New Deal, as an example. We didn't know how anxious they were to vote in legislation for late and two-term abortion. And we have a governor in Virginia that talks about, in very chilling terms, post-term abortion. So these are the things that made me want to take action. And I have to tell you, most people from my world would think, why in the heck would you ever want to do that? It's a very messy business.
Yes.
Your family now is dragged into the affair. Every minute of your life is now examined under a microscope. But at some point, you have to be the change you want to see.
Absolutely.
And that's really what it comes down to.
No, you're absolutely right. And but in politics, especially now today, in this day and age, it's very partisan. It's very cruel. Even just running in a primary, I can imagine that you're probably running into people that say, oh, you're not pure enough, you're not conservative enough, or that, you wishy-washy on this issue, so I don't know if I like you. Are you running into any of that stuff where you think that, I have to come across as being more hardline on topics, where you might have said, I'm not that hardcore on this?
Yeah. Here's the thing. The people that we speak to, as far as the candidates in the Republican primary, for the most part, we're talking to an audience that simply wants to identify the very best candidate. That's why I take as many questions as I possibly can now. I mean, I went to an event not that long ago. It was a women's event. 2 straight hours of questions, nonstop.
Nice.
I went to another event, an hour's worth of questions, nonstop. The thing that I find interesting is a number of my opponents, they purposely ignore questions. They don't want any part of questions. And my view is very simple. The people that are in these rooms today, they are Republican-minded. They want to identify the person who has the best chance of keeping this seat in Republican control with a Democrat opposition that are going to really come after the Republican challenger, right?
Absolutely.
So if you can't handle questions now from people who simply, they're not out to get you, they're simply out to identify you, right?
Yeah, voters who probably would vote for you.
So that's how I see it. You have to have strong opinions, I think, to want to run in the first place.
Absolutely.
Wrongs that you want to right. And I have been very clear on that since day one when I launched my website in early May. I have a very, very strong issues page. It's articulating all of the issues that I stand for. And people really respect that because, oddly enough, it's hard to find where candidates stand on issues on their websites. They don't even have them on there.
That's right. And when you actually look at where they stand, it's a lot of rhetoric and a lot of gobbledygook.
Right.
Very, very little straight talk. But let's talk about some of the things that you want to solve if you should win the nomination, and then should you win the general election and you actually go up to Washington, D.C. and take that oath and you start working for the people of the 7th District. What do you want to tackle? What's issue, okay, day one, what do you want to do? What do you want to focus on?
There's 3 buckets.
Okay.
Number 1 is debt, deficits, and spending. Right? I have a degree in accounting. So I look at a P&L statement maybe differently than other people might.
You actually know how to read one.
Well, that's true. And you've got $22 trillion in debt going up $1 million a minute in an extremely low interest rate environment. Mm-hmm. Soon the interest burden on our debt will exceed our entire U.S. military budget. Think about that. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. Between entitlements and interest cost, it's now chewing up over about, not quite, 70% of our federal budget.
Yes,
so that's leaving us very little money to be able to fully fund our military or have the money we need for highways, homeland security, veterans, research, our border patrol.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
So we're going to leave the next generation some really, really difficult decisions, and that's shameful.
No, you're right. It
so
is.
Debt deficits and spending, I would not have, by the way, voted for the $320 billion additional spending this summer.
I was going to ask you about that.
At what point do you say there actually is a debt ceiling? We have a debt ceiling that has no ceiling.
Yes.
So there's got to be a better way. I mean, we've got $1 trillion alone in fraud, waste, and tests that are needless tests in our healthcare system. Mm-hmm. Think about that. It's about $3.65 trillion healthcare, right? About 20% of our economy now. Mm-hmm. Yet about $1 trillion of it is waste and fraud. We can do better than that. And by the way, healthcare is another one for me that is, I'm very passionate about it. Here's the reason. We've allowed about 20% of our economy to now play outside of America's exceptionalism, which is free market. Mm-hmm. So everybody's talking about single payer and repeal and replace and Medicaid and so on, and all those things should be discussed, obviously.
Sure.
But until we bend the cost curve, Eric, right? We've got to bend the cost curve down into the right. Until we do that, we will never fix our healthcare problem.
Right.
So once we bring true free market principles to healthcare, which creates competition, which drives prices down, and the ultimate benefit is it improves our care.
Right.
We are under this misnomer in the United States that we have the best care in the world. Just go online, go to the World Health Organization, see where we stand. We're not even in the top 10.
Right. And so, healthcare cost is a big issue. It's actually helping drive some of this debt and this deficit we're running up now. You know who David Walker is?
Not familiar with David. No.
David Walker. He's the former head of the GAO, the Government Accountability Office. Mm-hmm. So he came out with they did a documentary in Debt We Trust, which talked about how much money we are actually bringing in versus how much is going out. And he proposed that in 2040, so that's 20 years from from Election Day, in 20 years, if nothing changes based on what we already have, every dollar that comes into the Treasury will be spent on Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security and interest on the debt. There'll be no money left for the military. There'll be no money left for prisons, roads, all the other things that you mentioned. And the thing that's driving it is, one, you have seniors that are living longer that don't see their bills. And also you're seeing the government just saying, okay, we'll cover this now, we'll cover that again. And at the time when this was brought up, this was about 2008, so about 11 years ago. And he said, just to fulfill the promise of the prescription drug bill that was signed into law by President Bush, we would have to have $8 trillion, that's 8 trillion with a T, invested at Treasury rates just to maintain the promise. And at the time, how much do we have? Zip. We have nothing. Right. And so therefore, if we don't do something, David has come out and said, this will bankrupt the country. And people don't understand that we're too big to, America, we are too big to fail, but we're also too big to rescue. Right. There's no one's going to be able to bail us out of this. We're going to have to make some tough choices. So let's talk about those tough choices. You say that you don't approve of the expansion in spending we've got. You're very passionate about fixing health care. What is something that you'll vote for? Will you vote to make cuts? Will you vote to allow people to go across state lines and buy their health insurance? What would you support?
Well, the last part is clearly free market, so I'm totally in favor of that. And then as it relates to the overall budget, we have to start by putting a number, whatever the percentage is agreed upon. I mean, look at our own state here in Georgia, right? Brian Kemp, 4% reduction this year, 6% reduction next year in the budget.
Right.
That is awesome, right? That shows fiscal responsibility, and the taxpayers love that. We've got to do the same thing in Washington, D.C. Whatever that number is, what will happen is people will realize that their lives did not change for the worst. In essence, they changed for the better because now we actually are starting to do the right thing, which can lead to more of the right thing, right? You start getting interested in doing the right thing. So to me, that's where you'd start.
Sure.
Then you can look at individual line items. I'm a zero line item budget guy, right? So I would look at a line item and say, okay, where are we with this line item? Is this line item benefiting the American people the way it's funded today? Right. Should we even have the line item in the first place? Right. You can make a pretty good case for the Department of Education as an example, right? When we put that in as a federal department,
right,
we were the number one educator in the world. Now we're 30-something. So you can't tell me that doing that was good for the American people.
And number one in ignorance, by the way.
There you go. So we've spent more per child by far than any country on the planet, and we're getting a heck of a lot less for it.
Sure.
That one should get a big X.
Yep. And so you would go line item by line item through the budget, see
is
what's
it funded
available.
Correctly? Is it overfunded? Is it underfunded? That's how an accountant would look at it, right? Versus what we do is we go, oh, well, let's just have an increase. Yeah. Whatever it is, 5%, 10%, 15%.
The answer is always more. It's a giant
money grab. It's a giant money grab. These departments seek the money which increases their power. That's got to end. We're $22 trillion in debt. Where does it end?
Well, it ends when they call the notes, as people who understand bankruptcy. When they call your notes and you don't have the money to pay, that's when they start seizing you and you lose your assets, and then eventually you're into bankruptcy. Your life's pretty much ruined at that point. And talk about problems that you saw, say, in the Great Depression. You'll see that magnified times probably 1,000.
Right. And we have had debt, by the way, in the past.
We have.
We have because of world wars and depressions. And when the wars ended and the good times came, we paid down that debt. Well, right now we're not in a world war and we're not in a depression, yet we're continuing to spend even more, even though we're taking in the largest revenue stream into our national treasury in our history. Does that make any sense for the next generation?
No, it doesn't. It's like you're bringing in enough money, but you're spending out more than you need.
Right.
What exactly is the purpose of this? And a lot of this comes down to politicians, and this bothers me on the current crop of politicians, incumbents. They don't want to take the pain. They don't want to say no. They don't know how to, I guess. And they are very fearful of being, because if you look at Paul Ryan, for example, the former Speaker of the House, when he said, listen, we have to do something on Medicare and Medicaid, he was booed, he was heckled, and of course, the interest groups all ran that big commercial we all saw where they pushed grandma off the cliff in the wheelchair, and they say, well, that's what's going to happen here. And it's like, well, what he's proposing is actually a very small cut that over, say, 10 years would actually save Medicare, and you wouldn't lose anything, so grandma's not going to get thrown off the cliff, so to speak. But so how are you going to deal with, because once you get in Washington, you're going to be bombarded by not just special interest groups, activists, but you're also going to be bombarded by your own party, especially as a junior member of Congress. You don't have a lot of power. You have a caucus you're going to have to work with. You're going to have a minority leader if the Democrats maintain majority. And they're going to come to you and say, hey, Mark, we need you to support us on this spending bill. We need you to work with it on this. We need as many votes as we can get.
Right. You have to have, first of all, the baseline for me is you have to have the courage of your convictions. And that starts with the ability to say no. What I see is people are not exercising that courage. And in many cases, they don't have any convictions at all. So they went there for the wrong reasons to begin with. It should not be that you go there to go along to get along. You've got to do what's right for your district and the American people, and that has to do with starting with the word no. You have to say no to things you don't believe in. And I got to tell you, I realize I'm not naive by taking those hard lines that it's going to be a political loser for me. I mean, it's been already told to me by one of our great congressmen here in the state of Georgia. He said, Mark, here's the thing. I admire you. You're on our wavelength. Matter of fact, I'm going to be seeing him in another week and a half up there.
Nice.
He said, here's the thing. Where you want to go, the party itself, they're not going to give you the committee assignments you want. They're not going to give you the money to help you with your reelection. I said, if that's what it takes to try to move the ship in the right direction, then so be it. I'm not going there to benefit in that manner. That's what's wrong. That's what's systemically wrong with Congress.
Right. So those people that are going to make those decisions on your committee assignments and those things, they're the ones that are there for the wrong reasons.
And that's why term limits has got to be considered now. And sometimes I hear two things on term limits.
Okay.
Right? I did a poll on Twitter. Term limits, 98% of the people with 5,500 votes cast, so it wasn't a small sample, right? 5,500 votes cast. 98% of those who responded said yes to term limits. They wanted to see term limits because they understand that this is a broken system. Politics should not be a career. It should be an objective. The objective is to get things fixed and to get things done in the service of the people. Then you pass the baton to the next person who has the same objective in mind. That's what our founding fathers, I believe, had in mind all along. Now, sometimes I'm hit with a couple of objections to this, Eric. What they would say to me is, well, you know, it's not in the Constitution, so I don't think we should go that path. Well, at some point, wasn't part of the presidential makeup either, right?
Yeah,
and I don't think anybody would argue that it's a good idea that we have term limits for our president. So things can change for the positive. The other thing that I hear is, Mark, you don't understand. We vote them out. I go, no, you don't. Just look at the data. It's 91% the incumbents win.
Yes.
And then look at the favorability rating of Congress.
It's about 11%.
There you go. So we've got this whole mountain of people that we all believe are bad actors for us, yet we continue to reelect them because they have access to power, they have access to money, and they have name ID.
Right.
That's a very formidable trifecta going for the incumbent versus the person trying to unseat them.
Yeah. So you don't have, it's one of the benefits of you running to this open seat. You're not running against an incumbent in either your primary or in the general. You won't be facing an incumbent. So that's beneficial on that end. But when you talk about term limits, give me an example. How many term limits would you set for a member of the House of Representatives that you're running for? How much you would set for a senator?
Yeah,
what would they be?
It's a good question. So you have like Ted Cruz, who thinks it should be for the House 3 terms of 2 years. My formula is different, and I'll get into why. I think it should be 2 terms of 4 years, just like the president. The reason why I believe
for the House.
For the House, right. For the Senate, 2 terms of 6 years. I'm willing to go there.
Okay.
Here's why I believe it should go from 2 years to 4 years. I go to Washington, D.C. I'm brand new into my new post. I want to do an incredible job for District 7 and the people I serve.
Right.
Right? I go there without the experience. And day one, what do you think I have to do, Eric?
You have to go through orientation. You have to learn how things work. You have to get office space. You have to learn your new assignment, learn your new job. You have to basically figure out what does it take to be a congressman, to actually do this job, because there's no private sector job that tells you, okay, this is what a congressman does on day one.
And that's part of it. What's the other part that I do day one?
You go and you start phone banking and asking for money.
There you go.
It's called dialing for dollars.
Correct. So
that's what
does that make any sense to you as a taxpayer? You're like, wait a minute. The person hasn't even got his seat warm or her seat warm yet, and they're now going after their reelection instead of serving me who's paying the tab. That's not right.
Yeah, they can't even find the bathroom yet, but yet they know where the phone is, so they can call their
And by the way, don't you think your donors would probably like to take a breather as well?
I would hope so.
They get you through the general election to have you take on this new awesome responsibility, and it truly is an awesome responsibility.
Absolutely.
Right? And you're calling them back saying, hey, help me get here 2 years from now.
Right.
Help me stay in this post. I mean, that's, to me, that just, again, that's an outsider's point of view. I know the incumbents there would probably violently disagree with me.
I'm sure they would. So you would say, two terms, 4 years each for a member of the House. You would say 2 6-year terms for a U.S. Senator. Would you be in favor of when Congress is in session, so whenever a Congress is in session, there's no fundraising. You can't fundraise because the entire congressional schedule, most people don't know this, the entire congressional schedule is organized around fundraisers. Right now, there's somebody who's dialing for dollars up there in Washington or back here in their district. They're looking for money.
The first 2 years, that's where I would go. The first 2 years, no.
The first 2 years, no fundraising.
No fundraising.
Okay.
And I also think that we really have to consider how much these races now cost.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's incredible. So over half of our Congress are millionaires when they go in. And one of the reasons why it's now more than half is because that's the kind of resources that it takes to get there. And those individuals may be very well-meaning, but I really wonder whether they can fully appreciate the mainstream citizen.
I'm sure it is, because when you got 2/3 of Congress that are millionaires, and there's a billionaire or two in there as well, how do they really know what's going on out here in the world? So, like, if the economy goes down, they're going to be fine at the end of the day.
Do you remember when we had George Bush Sr. out there campaigning? I'll never forget it. He went to that grocery store in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
The barcode reader.
Yeah, they scanned the thing, and he was shocked. He's like, oh, my gosh, this is unbelievable. Well, it had been in practice for about 8 years.
Yeah.
So he definitely looked a bit out of touch on that one.
He did. He was like, so what's this thing do?
Exactly.
That's true. It goes to show they don't know much about what's going on back home in any circumstances. And I think that's a problem. You lose contact when you get up there, and the people you do see are the activists and the interest groups. The common people, we're down here, we're working. We don't have the luxury of coming up there and seeing you. And if we call you, we may not get you on the phone. How are you going to try to be available to people? So if I need something from you, I can call and say, hey, Mark.
I handed you my campaign card a few minutes ago.
You did,
and it has my cell phone on it.
Okay.
So every single person has received the same card, and it has my cell phone on it. So that's step number one. I mean, my phone's buzzed here a few times since we've started this interview. So I'm very, very accessible because you learn a lot. You learn an incredible amount. That's why you have to take questions as a candidate. I don't understand it, Eric, why a number of my opponents refuse to take questions. They literally leave the room. They'll have some reason to have to walk out the door.
You're kidding me.
No, to not take a question. The reason why is obvious. They don't want to step in it, right? They don't want to get a question that they don't know how to answer. My view on it is the exact opposite. My view on it is the people in the rooms right now, they are wanting to identify the best candidate to represent the party to the general election.
Yeah.
So they're not trying to destroy you. They're simply trying to identify you.
Yeah.
And that comes from them asking questions. And as a candidate, it allows us to, I would say, sharpen our saw, right?
Yeah.
You sharpen your saw by getting those questions. I don't know what the questions are going to be.
Nope.
But you know what? And I start everyone with the same line. I say, listen, I want to take your questions. I'm just telling you up front, I don't necessarily have all the answers. But let's give it a shot, see how it goes. And so far, I've been able to handle every single question without dodging a question.
Is that appreciated?
And I tell you what, they come up to me after and they say, hey, thanks so much. Thanks for commenting on what I asked about. And how can you ask for more from your constituents than that? I mean, that's fair to me. That's very, very fair. I don't think it's fair that you dodge their questions, though.
No, I would agree. It's not fair to dodge a constituent's question. It's not fair to dodge a question from anybody.
Right.
And if you don't know the answer, don't be afraid to say, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Exactly. You asked me who David was. I didn't know.
No.
It's a lot better than me trying to bluff my way through it, which is
and I don't expect people
certainly
to know.
Systemic in Washington.
That's right. It's like, it's like, yeah, I know who he is. And I was like, no, you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, just say you don't know, all right? It's okay. No one's going to hate you if you don't know.
That's how I feel.
If you look at how many people, if you actually hold up pictures of, people in Washington, like, most people, they're like, I have no idea who that is. They can't tell you who's on the Supreme Court. They can't tell you who Nancy Pelosi is even.
Hey, walking my own district, right? Knocking on doors, and these are people who are identified Republican primary voters.
Yes.
You knock on their door, Eric, and you'd be shocked at how many don't even know who the congressman is. He's a 5-term congressman.
I know.
They don't have any idea when the election is, as far as the primary in May 19th, 2020. Right? They don't know who's in the race. It's pretty shocking.
No, it is, and that's an issue with the public. And I remember there was a comedian who had an old motto. It said, "The public sucks," and I don't think the public sucks. But again, I'm part of the public, so maybe I'm biased towards that. But the public does, they, as you just stated, they don't know, and it's unfortunate today.
Right.
And when they do talk about politics, all they see is either it's negative campaign ads or it's people attacking the president or supporting the president.
Right.
And there's a lot more to our system of government than elections. You have a job to do, and people need services that only, unfortunately, the government at this point can provide. And if people need to know who their representative is. If they have an issue, they need to know who to call.
And think about the power that mainstream media wields today. It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, look what happened with Project Veritas coming out with this expose from the contractor at CNN.
Oh, yeah.
This was something to actually see what was going on behind the curtain there.
Sure.
Wow. I just hope that as many people as possible get a chance to look at that information and be able to come to their own conclusion as far as how they should get their information and how they should process it.
That's the reason why. That's another reason why. You asked me off before we started here. Why I started this was because you get a lot of these times with candidates, and you get their puffy slogan and their platitudes, and that's all you get. Nobody ever asked them a hard question. And I had started noticing a lot of people who I probably would never vote for. I actually saw them do some of these alternative media forms like podcasts, and they sit down and they actually talk just as you and I are right here. And I said, okay, I could actually see voting for this person or that person. They're not who you're told they are in politics. Like maybe Donald Trump's not this SOB that everyone portrays him as.
Right.
And maybe he is. I don't know. I've never met him. And maybe Nancy Pelosi isn't. Maybe AOC, that's who I really should be talking about because that's their darling right now. AOC, maybe she's, this wonderful, nice person, but in reality, they're horrible. Because I've worked on Capitol Hill, and I've seen, behind closed doors, some of these people are the worst people you will ever meet. They're not good people.
Right. I will say this. Our side wants to see America be as great as it can be. The other side seems to have an agenda, to make America disappear. This is incredible, right? We can talk about the border. That kind of leads into it a bit, doesn't it?
It does a little bit. But
Yeah.
So let's take some of these issues and why you think the other side wants the country to disappear through these issues, and we'll start with the border right there. So you're in favor. I'm assuming you're in favor of building a fence across the border.
I'm in favor of having a secure border. A fence could be part of that.
Okay.
Technology can be part of that. Whatever allows us to have a secure border.
Okay.
A country without secure borders cannot control its destiny. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
So that is job one. We must secure our southern border. Then from there, we have to be able to enforce our visa laws because half the undocumented immigrants arrive here on an airplane.
Yep.
And a sovereign nation has the right. Matter of fact, I would argue vehemently it's an obligation to our citizens.
Sure.
So a sovereign nation has the right to enforce its immigration policy. Once we've done those things, we can sit down and discuss who can be a guest worker and who could and should be put on a path to citizenship. But until we have a secure border, we will never enforce our immigration policy. So what's the point of passing more immigration reform if we're not going to enforce it? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Okay, it's understandable. So when it comes to enforcing our immigration policy, because as you pointed out, the vast majority of these people that came here that are now undocumented came here legally, came here on a visa, their visa expired, they just never left.
Right.
You're not in favor of just going rounding these people up and sending them home, are you?
No, what I'm in favor of is let's do the basics first,
Okay.
right? And then that way the American people can feel secure about the destiny of the country that they call home.
Okay.
Right? And then from there, we can have a substantive conversation in regard to how do we fix this problem. The challenge is people are pretty resistant in many cases because we've been down this path
Sure.
so many times. And it's like the boy that cries wolf after a while, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, look what goes on in our Congress today with the impeachment and all this nonsense, the Mueller report. I mean, at what point will two things I'd love to see. I'd love to see a Democrat admit that they were wrong and say that they're sorry. But instead what they do is just go after the next thing. I get the feeling that—
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, I get the feeling now the whole game plan is, you know what? We know we're wrong, but we're going to throw it up against the wall anyway because we might just catch magic in the bottle. We might just somehow get lucky and find that there really is something there that we didn't see at the beginning, and we finally got him. It took us 100 wild goose chases, but we finally landed where we wanted to go. That's dividing our country.
It's like the old saying, admit nothing, deny everything, and make counter accusations.
There you go.
That seems to be the terminology of Washington.
Yeah. And Big Pharma's doing it now over this opioid thing, aren't they?
Sure, they definitely are. We had the former vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Winnefeld, on the show earlier this year, and his son died in the opioid epidemic, unfortunately.
Wow.
And he started an organization called SAFE, and it's and he's attacked the 6 pillars of the opioid crisis, and that is, education for everybody, including the pharmaceutical companies, the doctors, know how much it's getting prescribed and how high a pill count is it being given. What needs to be prescribed for certain things. Like, if you get your wisdom teeth taken out, do you need to be put on opioids? I had my wisdom teeth taken out. It's like, no, put me on extra strength Tylenol and I'm fine. Okay.
Exactly. I was at an event last night, not to interrupt you, Eric, but to this point, right? So a woman had a soft cast on her wrist, and afterwards, I had never met her before, so I introduced myself, and we started having a really nice chat. And I said, gee, is everything okay? And she said, yeah. I said, well, tell me a little bit about, what happened. So she had wrist surgery, right? The doctor gives her 2 bottles of OxyContin. She goes, no, I don't need them.
No.
She doesn't want the bottles. They literally force her to take these 2 bottles. So she has at home 60 pills, OxyContin, that she didn't want, that the insurance company will ultimately get billed for and have to pick up that tab. This is wrong. When you're the patient, you should be able to dictate that, shouldn't you?
Yeah, the doctor's a servant.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it was a very good sign of the problem that we're seeing. We lost more Americans this past year to opioid addiction and abuse than we lost in all of the Vietnam War.
Right.
Now, there were people in Washington, D.C. and major cities around this country protesting, right?
Oh, yes.
The Vietnam War. Why aren't we protesting this? So we've got many bad actors in the pharmaceutical industry, the makers and distributors of these opioids, right? That literally have ginned this whole thing up. They have made an army of addicts that are now literally prisoners to a bottle of OxyContin. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And what we do is the bad actors, the CEOs, we give them a fine, right? It's a business expense. And here's the sinister part. They pay their expense and they go right on to sell more. They don't learn what they did wrong. I mean, it's like incredible. Until we start to prosecute the perpetrators, until people actually pay time for their malfeasance.
And you're not talking about just the doctors. You're talking about the people that push these drugs, the manufacturers.
Correct.
Until we start putting manufacturers in jail, nothing's going to change.
Right. In America, we have, 330 million or so people, young and old.
That's right.
You know how many prescriptions we write in America? Do you have any idea?
It's over 1 billion, isn't it?
4.25 billion a year.
Okay.
Think about that.
That study I saw was way off.
Yeah. 13 prescriptions per child, man, and woman in America.
That is just is infuriating to me.
There you go.
That makes me angry because I heard this statistic, just to follow up that America, with 338 million people we have here, we have, so we're about 1% of the world's population, but we take 90% of the world's pills. There's always a pill for something.
Exactly.
And when people go to the doctor for something, the doctor just listens and you say, well, I got this, this, and this. And they see the doctor for 5-6 minutes and the doctor's like, okay, here you go. Right. Here's Prozac, here's lithium, here's whatever you need.
Right.
And the doctor, is like, okay. And some people, it's like, they don't need a pill, for God's sakes, especially with people with mental illness. That's a big issue, and we're going to get to this here in a minute. But mental illness is for some reason, still taboo. Hopefully that's going to change. But, people go to the doctor and, they say, I'm feeling kind of depressed, and all this. And it's like, okay, here you go. Go take this and you'll be fine. And it's like, well, hold on. Why are you depressed?
Exactly.
I'm like, are you depressed because, look, if you're depressed because, you lost your job, you got divorced, your health's gone down the hill, all that reason, you don't need a pill. It's like, okay, you need someone to talk to. It's like, you need help. You need someone, put me in contact with, someone to help you with a divorce, get you a divorce lawyer who will take your case for free, something like that. Because otherwise, if their world's falling to hell around them, they're like, I'm fine. What good does that serve?
Here's the thing. You hit the nail on the head as far as the amount of time a doctor spends on average with a patient. Depending on the study you see, 6 to 7 minutes on average in America today. That's incredible, right?
That's probably being generous.
So here's what goes on. Because we allow in America direct-to-consumer advertising of pharmaceuticals.
That's right.
There's only 2 countries in the world that allow it. The United States of America and New Zealand. That's it.
Right.
Right? So the other 198 countries or so figured this out, but we still haven't. Right? So what happens is you watch that advert and you think, you know what, I have those symptoms. That's me. You walk into your doctor, you say, hey, you know what, I need XYZ drug. I can tell you I've had many conversations with well-meaning doctors, and here's where they go. They go, Mark, what I have to do, because I'm with the patient, for such a short period of time, I have to determine on the spot whether I want to get in an argument with my patient over the prescription that he wants me to write or she wants me to write, or I look at it and go, is it probably going to be okay for them to take it? Will it probably not do any harm? If it's not going to do any harm, I'll just write it and let them go on their way. They feel like they had a win. I'm like, wow, that is not practicing of medicine that most people would think is proper.
That sounds like a drug dealer, right?
It's incredible to me.
Yeah, it sounds like just like a drug dealer. The person comes in and says, "Hey, I need this," and the drug dealer's like, "Okay, got the money? Okay,
exactly.
Here you go." Yeah. Well, I know your insurance company's going to pay for it. That's fine, but it's just it's very screwed up. It's very screwed up, and these executives.
You should hear the stories I hear out there.
Oh, I've heard them myself.
Yeah.
I've got people I've met that have dealt with this stuff, and like when I go to the doctor. And the doctor, wants to put me on medication. Like I went and I'm a veteran, served in the military. I've got some problems, and I've gone and talked to people, and they immediately wanted to put me on stuff, and I said no. And they were like, "What?" Right. And I said no. And I said, "If you sign that, I'm not going to go pick it up. And if you bring it to my house, I'm going to flush it. I don't want it."
Right.
And they're like, "Well, why not?" I'm like, "Because I don't want it. I don't think I need that. I'm telling you what my problem is, and I know a pill's not going to fix that because a pill didn't fix any of my others."
Right.
And it's just, I don't understand why people think that, a pill is going to fix. And this is a point I made to Admiral Winnefeld when we had him on here, that people nowadays, when it comes to opioids and prescription drug issues, people are dealing with what I call the Elvis Presley syndrome. Elvis Presley, for those of you who don't know, Elvis Presley had his own copy of a PDR. It's a physician's desk reference. So if you wanted a certain caliber of drugs or pills, you went to that and found, okay, what do you have to do to get this? He would go to the doctor and say, I got that. And he knew a PDR better than the doctor did. And people also think, well, hey, a doctor gave me this. Doctor wouldn't hurt me. The doctor, they went to med school. They went to dental school. They know better than I do. They wouldn't hurt me. Well, and then if the doctor's not told, hey, this stuff can be addictive if you prescribe it too much, so who's really the culprit?
I agree. I did a post yesterday because I don't know if you're aware, the first federal trial was going to take place in Cleveland yesterday.
That's right.
And ultimately they settled out of court so that the trial did not commence yesterday. But I had tweeted it out early in the morning, the first reports on it. Yeah. So people started weighing in on this.
I'm sure.
And they know if they follow me on Twitter and also go to my website, markcongress2020.com, markcongress2020.com. You can read about my position on healthcare, and certainly opioids is a big aspect of my position on healthcare, right?
Sure.
So here's the thing. You've got, in America, people who are in pain. So they feel like, I have to have the opioids, right?
Yeah.
And I've never said that I don't think we should have painkillers.
No.
What I've been saying is we have to be able to bring some common sense to the challenge of opioid addiction. To lose 400,000 fellow Americans, that's just so far out of bounds. It's not even, I can't even tell you how far out of bounds that is, right?
Yeah.
So What did people do before OxyContin? They had pain.
Yeah.
So what did we do before these things? There's other ways to deal with it. Just like you said, they wanted to give me opioids, and I said, no, extra Tylenol will do the job for me.
Yeah.
Perfect. That was what that woman was saying last night with her wrist surgery.
Yeah.
She said, I don't want OxyContin. I'll take some, stuff that I have in my medicine cabinet.
Right.
Which I think most people, they want to believe their doctor. Right.
They do. Like I said, they're like, the doctor ain't going to hurt me.
Right.
They don't want to hurt me.
Right.
And
Doctor knows best, right? That's the propaganda from the AMA. The doctor knows best. Doctor's orders is another good one, right?
That's right.
And my mother is 89, God bless her. I just talked to her this morning, as a matter of fact. Here's the thing. She believes that 100%. And I say, Mom, wait, time out for a second. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had anybody go for a second opinion? Any friend of yours? Oh, yeah, sure, Mark. Is the second opinion always the same as the first opinion? She goes, no, most of the time it's not, as a matter of fact. I go, exactly. So when you think about doctor's orders, remember me in your ear saying, what about those second and third and fourth opinions?
Right.
Right? So it's really not a doctor's order. It's a doctor's opinion. Because if it was truly a doctor's order, wouldn't all the doctors have the exact same opinion?
Yeah.
Right? That makes sense when you think about it logically.
Yeah.
Right?
A doctor's order, like, hey, listen, no, if we don't have surgery right now to get cancer out of you, you're going to die. Mm-hmm. Every doctor says, yeah, you need surgery for this. Mm-hmm. Except the witch doctor, it lives in the hut, out there in the swamp somewhere, who says, just avoid yogurt and you'll be fine. Because there are some of those doctors out there, like the people that believe HIV doesn't cause AIDS, but we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. That's because those people people need to be.
I just think people should take responsibility for their health care, not just indiscriminately turn it over to someone else. The information is at our fingertips now.
Exactly.
Right? There's no reason for you not to get the education when it's your life on the line, your health on the line.
Exactly.
That's how I feel. So know about the side effects. Ask the doctor. Ask for the inserts that are in the box that you never see, right? Think about it. When was the last time somebody gave you that insert, right? It's folded into 50 million different folds, and it's in a type that you need a magnifying glass to read it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, small print.
Right.
You unfold it, it's like this big something.
Right. Choices have consequences.
That's true. The choices have consequences. And people have to understand that that's where it comes to this issue, and we'll stay on healthcare here, because a lot of people are pushing on the Democratic side this Medicare for All promise. Mm-hmm. And they all say healthcare is a human right. It's a human right. And when I hear that, I say, okay, if it's a right, rights come with responsibilities. Mm-hmm. So if healthcare is a right and I have to help pay for your costs, then you need to be responsible with your health, okay? So don't ride a motorcycle without a helmet. Don't eat fatty food and not exercise. Actually ask your doctor, if you need this caliber of medication. I need to rely on you rather than just blanket acceptance. Where do you stand on healthcare? Is it a right?
Well, let's go backward in time.
Okay.
America was founded with natural rights bestowed upon us from our Creator. Mm-hmm. Think about this, right?
Right.
That's how we produced the most productive country the world has ever known. And during the 1900s, we morphed natural rights into a progressive agenda of human rights. So by definition, now it's a person, it's a government that now controls all of this instead of our Creator. To me, this is where we started to head down the slippery slope. Okay. So I'm not a big fan of the human rights of healthcare.
Okay.
I think that free market needs to be the cornerstone of our healthcare system. Mm-hmm. I think that people should have all kinds of choice available to them. If they want to not have insurance, that's okay. If they want to have a high deductible and a catastrophic policy, fantastic. If they want the Cadillac Super Duper plan and they can handle that, fantastic. The one thing I know for sure, though, and I know virtually every American would agree with me on this, is in Congress, if you create legislation and exempt yourself from it as a congressperson, that's wrong.
Yes.
And healthcare is the new poster child for it. They're not governed by Obamacare.
Nope.
They're governed by their own plan, and that is wrong. We have to stop that 100%. You're going to be governed by the same laws that you voted in for the rest of America.
Right. And that's frustrating because, these congressmen and senators, they have 4 options on health care. And some people in America, they don't have one. So the obvious question to come back to this on healthcare being a human right is, okay, so what do you do about the 15 million people that don't have any coverage at all, who are showing up when they're so sick they have to go to the emergency room, and that's $1,000 a visit. What do you do about those people?
Hey, I don't profess to have a quick answer to that one. That's going to take a lot of homework to try to figure out how to do the math. But I do know one thing. The math becomes far more favorable when you bring free market and bend the cost curve down and to the right. When I was a kid, it was 5% of GDP. That was a sustainable number.
Sure.
It's 18 and projected to be 19.7% by the year 2035, or 2025, excuse me. That's not that far away.
No, 6 years.
Right. So that's why I keep preaching this idea that we've taken 20% of our economy and we've allowed it to be co-opted outside of the tenet of America's exceptionalism, free market, the principles of free market. And I'm not a believer that the government is going to provide a better healthcare solution than free market.
Right.
That would be like saying the post office is better with our mail than FedEx.
I know.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, like did you see the town hall that they had where I forget it, I think it was Kamala Harris, where she said that I'm going to abolish private insurance, and I said okay, and people cheered at that, and I thought to myself, okay, so it's so good we have to force you to have it by taking away other options.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh, this is so good, we're going to take it away. All right. Imagine if that was the way it worked. Like you just use this example with the post office and FedEx. Imagine if you use that with cell phones. Like, hey, Verizon's better than AT&T, so we're just going to ban AT&T. They can't do that anymore.
And by the way, why
insane.
do people that have national health care come to America for their health care? You ever wonder about that?
I was going to bring that up. Because
why do they come streaming over the northern border to be able to take advantage of our health care system?
Exactly.
It's because national health care creates an environment where they're sitting on the sidelines with something that may be very, very serious.
Yes.
And by not having the attention at the time that the condition is identified, right, that they're pushed downstream, in some cases many, many, many months downstream, where now the problem continues to worsen. That's why they come to America.
Right.
So to me, just look at other parts of the world and say, how perfect is the system? It's really not that perfect.
No, it's not. And I tell people, and I get into these conversations with people, and they all say, oh, well, they do it better. And I said, okay, then why do the richest people in those countries come here? People that can, if you're a rich guy, you could probably get the best healthcare anywhere in the world, maybe.
Right.
But yet they don't go to Switzerland. They come to the United States. They go to New York. Or you look at people that do that here in America who push for Medicare for all, push for government takeover of healthcare. Michael Moore, for example, or Michael bin Laden, as some people call him.
Well, he went to Cuba, right, on that documentary.
Went to Cuba on the Sicko documentary. When he weighed over 300 and some pounds. When he wanted to lose weight, he didn't go to Cuba to lose weight. He went to a privately run weight loss center and lost weight and changed his diet.
Right.
So, that's that hypocrisy
and by
that
the
we
way,
find out.
This is going to be unpopular for me to actually put forth, but we keep talking about health care. At what point are we actually going to put the spotlight on the big problem of the fact that America has never been more unhealthy than it is today? Exactly. I mean, if you look at old pictures, right, and then you see the same scene with the current employee base, let's say, and you go, holy smokes, look at the compare and contrast here. These people all look fit. Their eyes have a certain gleam to them, right?
They look strong.
They look healthy and strong. This group, you can't say the same.
No, when you've got the military saying that a third of America's youth is not fit to go into the military. They're overweight.
Exactly.
They're obese. And you look at schools now, probably some Department of Education pushed. They got rid of physical education, saying, oh, you don't need that. More time studying in school. You need this. And then they all, put it all,
Yeah.
just, get rid of the cheeseburgers and the pizza and, and give them salad and, the kid will lose weight. It's like, no, there's more to nutrition and health and fitness than just simply what you put into your body. Because, you look at those two pictures, these people over here, it was harder to work in that factory back then versus these people. I'm like, now you got machines to do it. There's fewer people than probably in this picture. So that's where that's the things that people just don't think about.
Right.
No, they just because people think it's that simple.
Well, it gets back to the choices equate to consequences, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to become immobile and not watch what you intake and think that you're going to have a perfectly healthy life, that's a little misguided in your thinking.
No, you're 100% correct on that. So what would you support if you go to Congress for mandating health responsibility? What would you mandate? Would you mandate more time for physical education in school? Would you advocate for changing the school lunch program? What would you do?
Yeah, those are good questions. I think if I gave it some quick thought, anything that we can do to try to make being healthy appealing instead of unappealing, because let's face it, driving by McDonald's looks pretty appealing to you, right? When you're hungry and you're on the road, and we've all now lived very busy lives, our phones are...
And they're and the fast food, they're responding to this demand also. If there's a demand for change, they will adapt to it.
It's tough. I mean, I agree. But at some point...
You have to push.
We're bankrupting our country. We're bankrupting families all over the United States. I mean, I hear these story after story after story. The mother at a restaurant that I spoke at to a women's group a few weeks ago, afterwards she came over to me. She was a server, middle-aged woman. And she says, I couldn't help but overhear you talking about healthcare. Do you mind if I tell you my story? I said, sure, go right ahead.
Yeah.
She said, well, I came off my shift. She goes, I work here. I don't make a lot of money, and I don't have insurance. Sure. I go home, and my son is complaining about really severe stomach pain. I'm thinking, gee, what the heck should I do? So I put him in the car. We go to the hospital. They tell me, oh, what he has is gas. Okay, drive the child back to the house. That was the end of the story. He got over it.
Yeah.
Life went on until I opened my mailbox about 3 weeks later, and I pulled out the envelope. You know how much that bill was for?
How much?
$8,000.
What?
$8,000. So I post this on Twitter. Now I start getting all these stories coming back.
$8,000 for gas.
$8,000 for gas. I call it the $8,000 gas bill. Right? That's like insane.
That's true.
This one guy, he goes to the emergency room. He had a cut on his baby finger, right? So he has it in a small towel to hold the bleeding at bay. But he goes and he sits there for an hour and a half, never sees a doctor. Finally, a nurse takes a look. She goes, oh, yeah, we'll fix this up for you. She comes over with the medical-grade super glue. You've probably seen this, right? Yeah. So they put a little of the medical-grade super glue on his cut, send him on his way. He opens his mailbox to a $3,600 bill.
So the guy got charged less money for a small cut than the kid did for gas.
But still, $3,600, it makes a $400 military hammer look like a bargain. I mean, seriously, it's this type of thing. My neighbor goes for an MRI, right? This is a true story, happened a few weeks ago. He tells me this story. Mark, I go in for my MRI. I've been there before, so they recognize me. They say, John, we're ready for you. Great. Out of curiosity, how much is my MRI going to actually cost me? They go, no, don't worry. We just bill your insurance company. He goes, no, I understand that. He said, but I have a deductible, and I haven't used it all year. So I'm curious, how much is it going to actually cost? And they go, oh, well, hold on for a second. So she comes back, and she says, well, it's $3,000. He said, well, I'll tell you what. How about if I just pay you cash? He put it on his American Express card, $360.
Wow.
$360. And I've heard 3 of these stories now, very similar, a very similar ratio, by the way.
Sure.
So these are the challenges that we face, and that's why I say until we bring free market practices to healthcare, we're never going to fix the problem. So we can talk all we want about all this other stuff, and we're going to just continue to see it creep further and further up as it relates to a percentage of GDP. And we're just going to continue to bankrupt more and more and more families. So do I believe in private health care? Yes, I do. Do I believe that the government, through, say, Medicare and Medicaid, can have a program that can help folks as well? Yes, I do. But until we get this to happen, to that cost curve, right, we're never going to get ourselves out of this mess.
Oh, no, you're 100% right on that. But since we're coming towards the end of the interview here, let's go through some topics and see if we can answer these as quick as we can.
Okay.
The waitress that you told me about made me think about this. $15 hour minimum wage. Where do you stand?
No,
Not in favor.
not in favor.
Okay. Where do you stand? Where do you stand on troop withdrawals from Syria?
Should withdraw.
Withdraw.
We should not start wars we don't know how to end. We've lost 6,000 American soldiers in these wars. Over the last 20 years, we spent $6 trillion of our treasure.
Okay.
And we brought 45,000 of our soldiers home with injuries, many
Unseen.
who will take to their grave.
That's true. Where do you stand on veterans' health care? Would you support privatizing the VA, allowing the veterans to seek treatment outside the VA and still be covered by government?
Well, Donald Trump's done a good job of that, I think, in the sense of giving them the option. So he's, for the first time, a person who has put the spotlight on this. And I think number one is because a person works in government, that doesn't mean that you're preordained to keep your job if you're not capable of doing it.
No.
But this has been a huge problem. And that's how we end up in some of these situations because people are not doing their job. I mean, look at the number of absenteeisms that take place for government employees, right? You could never run your own business this way.
No.
But we allow a government employee, and back in the day, a government employee made less money than a person, that worked for a traditional company, right?
Right.
But they had good benefits for the most part.
Sure.
Right? So that was a good reason to go, okay, I want to be a public servant and put my dues in because I believe in the cause and I've got a good, benefit package.
Sure.
I might not make as much money. Well, today they make more money on average, right? Still have the most incredible benefit package and yet don't feel that they should necessarily, and I'm not trying to paint everybody with this brush, so don't get me wrong on this.
No,
but there are people that are really
good.
taking advantage of this system that don't even show up for work. Come on.
You're 100% correct on that.
So we got to clean that up. That's a mess we need to clean up. There's no reason why we can't clean it up, and by definition, we'll start to make progress.
That's called waste. And,
that's right.
There's a lot
and
of
fraud.
It. Yes, waste and fraud. What would you? Where do you stand on? Where do you stand on marijuana?
Medical marijuana for seizures. There's good evidence that it can make a difference, not for recreational use.
Would you be in favor of taking it away from the federal government and allowing states to decide?
States should decide that.
Okay. Where do you stand on DACA? These kids that were brought here by their parents. Where do you stand on what should we do with them?
I'll go back to what I said earlier. Until we secure our border, have a meaningful response to our visa laws, and take control of our immigration policy, those things come first.
Okay. So would you support amnesty?
Not a big fan of amnesty.
Even if it's probably the only good option?
Like I say, not a good fan. I think it creates longer-term issues that allow us to compromise when it's not in the best interest of the American people to compromise.
Understood. Where do you stand on Confederate monuments?
Confederate monuments, they have their place in history.
Okay. So you don't support them being taken down?
No.
Okay. Where do you stand on school choice?
I certainly don't support anyone taking down any property like that without the citizens at least having an opportunity to weigh in.
Okay.
So you've got a mob, if you will, that decide in the middle of the night they're just going to pull it down.
Sure.
They need to be prosecuted for that.
I would agree. That's vandalism.
Correct.
You can have your morals all day long, but that doesn't mean you're above the law.
That's how I feel too.
Where do you stand on school choice?
School choice. I'm for it.
All for it.
Yeah.
Vouchers for kids who want to go to, say, a private school but couldn't afford to. Would you support that?
I'm definitely for school choice. I'm also for eliminating the Department of Education and Common Core.
Common Core, you're in favor of getting rid of that? Okay, that was my next question. So
I thought you might go there, yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. How do you think you can work with Democrats if you go to Congress? Civility
needs to re-enter Washington, D.C.
You worried me there with that long pause there, Mark.
Yeah, but that's how I feel. I talked to a person who was a congressman for many years and served in the cabinet, right? Mm-hmm. And he made a good point when we talked. He said, Mark, here's the thing, because I was pushing this agenda that we need to bring civility back, right?
I would agree.
And he said, Mark, here's the thing. He says, there are people on the other side of the aisle that we actually could build relationships with. But, I don't know if our party's all that good at it at the moment. Maybe a guy like you, getting to know you a little bit from our coffee today. We were at a Starbucks having a cup of coffee for a few hours. Uh-huh. He says, you strike me as a person that actually could build relationships. You might be able to pull that off.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's got to start somewhere. It's got to start somewhere. So we're a very divided nation right now. I think the best piece of research, by the way, I ever read in my life, it goes back about 14 years ago. I don't even know how I stumbled upon it on the internet. Mm-hmm. But it was a social scientist, right? They conduct this bit of research. So what they did is they put test subjects in a test room. Uh-huh. They proctored the exam, and it was a multiple choice exam. When they were done, the proctor said, listen, what I want you to do is I want you to go back on your exam and circle all the questions that you know for sure, 100%, that you answered right.
Okay.
There's not a doubt in your mind, and there's no advantage to circling less questions versus more questions or vice versa. You only circle the questions that you know for sure you got right.
Right.
So, of course, the test subjects did what was asked. Here was the bottom line. Being right, they were convinced 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. They actually were right 85% of the time. 85% of the time. So for me, I can get very strong-willed.
Sure.
But I always hear a little voice in my head saying, is this the 15%? Could this be the 15%? Maybe you need to open your mind up. Maybe you need to shut your mouth and open your ears up and listen to what they have to say. Maybe this is the 15% moment that you're not going to see if you don't look at it that way. Mm-hmm. It's really helped me since reading that research.
That's very helpful. I always tell people, God gave you 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. And it's like they intend you to listen more than you talk.
Exactly.
Where do you stand on impeachment right now? Would you vote against impeachment inquiry, or would you say, listen, just let the investigation go through and it's up to the majority?
I would vote against it. I don't think it's a good thing for our country. I think that we are squandering not only time, but the work of the American people is not getting done as well. So if they really feel strongly that our president is not fit to serve, mm-hmm. We've got an election coming up in a year from now, let the voters put it in their own hands if they really feel that strongly. But I believe that the reason why we've tracked the way we have is because they know that they don't really have a candidate that can be a substantial candidate. So the only way they can move the needle is going down this path, and that's unfortunate.
No, you're very right. Well, Mark, we've come to the end of this interview. My final thing is our sponsor, the Constitute Voice. They started an organization called Coffee with the Candidates. They're going to be launching that next month. And they're trying to get people to come out, and it's going to be informal, where you get to sit and actually answer questions from constituents, Republican, Democrat, Independent. Everybody's welcome. It's nonpartisan. They don't endorse anybody. They bring anybody that wants to come. They wanted me to ask you, would you be willing to participate in that?
100%.
Awesome. So you heard it right here on the air. He's committed to doing this. So, Mark, I've enjoyed this very much. Good luck out there on the campaign trail. You got your work cut out for you. And should you be elected, best of luck if you make it to Washington. And hopefully we'll have you back on here and we can call you Congressman Gonsalves.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's been great spending time with you, taking the questions. Hopefully the listeners got something of value out of it. At the end of the day, we want to see America prosper. It's in all of our best interests, regardless of your ideology.
Yes.
Right? So let's put that as the first and foremost thing in our heads. Let's allow America to prosper for today's generations and the next generations.
Prosperity for all.
That's what I think.
That's great. Yeah. Mark, thank you again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Great spending time with you, Eric.
Good talking to you. Again, this has been the Free Speech Zone. I'm your host, Eric Barnard, and I'll see you next time.